Hello there boys and girls. In today's video, we will be taking a look at what flexboxes are. And what do I mean when I say display, flex, justify content and align items to center and flex direction to column. And to properly reference what we'll be learning, I'm going to be using the complete guide to Flexbox article written by Chris Coyer. I don't know how to pronounce that exactly. This is practically the best document out there to learn flexboxes. If you want to check it out for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description, and also as a disclaimer, I won't be covering everything you can do with flexboxes. Our main focus for now is going to be how we can align things better inside our website. We will also be making a small project at the end of the video to allow you to see what exactly you can do with various combinations of flexbox properties. And with that out of the way, let's get going. So when it comes to flexboxes, the most important thing you need to know is that there's a container and there are items inside of it. In this illustration, there's a container right here, and there are flex items inside of it. The container has two axes, the main axis and the cross axis. The main axis of a flex container is the primary axis, meaning all your items will be aligned through it. The cross axis will always be perpendicular to the main axis. Let's look at some flexbox properties now. Firstly, let's look at the display flex property. This will always be applied to the container. I have created a CodePen and the HTML markup is pretty simple. There's a div with a class of container and there are some item classes inside of it. I've given them some initial CSS. It's pretty simple. I made everything have a box sizing of border box. I'm getting rid of the body's margin. The container will have a width and height of 50 VW and 80 VH respectively. I also gave it a darker background color. I also set it to be at the center of the screen somewhere around, and a padding of 1 EM so that the items inside of it don't stick way to the edge. The item individually have a width of 50 pixels and height of 50 pixels. They have a background color of red and a margin to distinguish between them. Now, if I set the container's display property to flex, all the items will be aligned according to the main axis, as we saw in our little illustration right here. The main axis right now by default is going from left to right, and that's what we're seeing in our CodePen as well. But you can change that by saying flex direction, and then you can set it to either row or column. Right now it's a row. If you set it to column, it will go downwards. Yeah, so flex direction establishes the main axis, and you can set it to row, row reverse, column, and column reverse. The row will be from left to right, and the row reverse will be from the right to left direction. Column will be the same as row but from top to bottom, so up and down, and column reverse will be from down to up. Let's try column reverse right now. Now it went from down to up. We don't really need to look at flex wrap right now. Let's jump to justify content. This will space things on the main axis. This defines the alignment along the main axis. It helps distribute extra free space left over when either all the flex items on a line are inflexible or are flexible, but both have reached their maximum size. So if you get rid of this for now and write justify content and set it to center, everything will go straight to the center of the page. If you do flex start, it will go right here. And if you do flex end, everything will go over here. Now if you do flex direction to column, everything will be aligned all the way at the end. If you do flex start, things will go up here. And if you do center, everything will be at the center. Let's take a look at align items now. This defines the default behavior of how the flex items are laid along the cross axis. So this is basically a variation of justify content, but only for the cross axis. You can set the align items to stretch, flex start, flex end, center, baseline, first baseline, last baseline, start, end, self start, ... There's a lot. But let's try it out. All we need to think of are just 3 properties. First, let's try out flex start. It should do absolutely nothing because everything is already over here. But if you go with end, everything will go all the way at the end of this. And if you do center, everything will come right over here. So if you really wanted to center something, what you could do is you could set align items to center, which would put it at the center of the cross axis, and then justify content to center as well. And that would basically center everything. And now you can apply flex directions and make it flow in whatever way you want. These are some of the basic properties that you can play around with when it comes to a Flexbox. And since we have now learned how to align things inside a Flexbox, let's get along with the project. This is what our final output is going to look like. There will be a way to add randomly sized and colored items into our Flex container. And there will be 3 options: justify content, align items, and flex direction. And we will be able to see what happens if you set things up in any way you choose. I've added 3 options. You can do whatever you want. There's really no limit to that. To get started, make an index.html file. In here, make an app div with a controls div, a base div, a choice div, and an adder div. In the controls div, we will have 3 categories with a h2 title and some buttons. Copy and paste the category div 2 more times. The first one is for justify content, the second one is for align items, and the third one is for flex direction. The justify content buttons will be center, spaced evenly, space between, and space around. We will be making some functions as well. So add an on-click event listener to the buttons. For the justify content category, our function will be justify content, and we will pass in the names of the button in CSS form. The same thing will happen for both the other categories, but the functions will be called align items and flex direction. In the choice, we want to show what we chose. So make 3 divs with the IDs set to JC, AI, and FD for justify content, align items, and flex direction. The adder div will contain a button called add, and on click, we want it to add a div into our base. Let's start our CSS now. Select all and set the box sizing to border box. Set the margin to 0 and padding to 0 as well. Also, set the font family to Arial. As always, the app will occupy the entire screen, so set its width to 100 VW and height to 100 VH. Set the display to flex, center all the items like we have seen a few minutes ago, and set the flex direction to row and position to relative. Let's come to the controls. Set its width to 50 VW and height to 100 VH. Center align all the items and justify content as spaced evenly. Set the flex direction to column and color to white. We want the categories to be 90% of the width of the controls. Set the padding to 2 EM. Give it a neat background color as well. We will align items to center and justify content spaced evenly here. We also want the flex direction to be column. The H2 will have a font size of 2 EM. I know that's pretty stupid and that we don't really need to do it. Set its width to 100%. The buttons container will have a width of 100%. We want everything to be centered on the cross axis and evenly spaced on the main axis. Set the flex direction to row as well. The individual buttons will have a larger font size and a width of 100%. Set the margin to 1 pixel to get some distance between the buttons. Give it a background color, text align to center, and cursor to pointer. These are pretty simple steps, and you should always do what you want for the values. Coming to the base. This is where we will see the output. So set its padding to 1 EM so that the divs don't stick to the edge. Give it a width of 50 VW and a height of 100 VH. Let's fix the buttons really quick. I'm basically decreasing the font size of the button and reducing the padding of the categories. Let's give the base some background color and set the display to flex. Also, I want all the divs inside the base to have some common property. Let's give them a border. The choice will be positioned absolutely at the bottom right corner. Let's also have a larger font size inside of here. The adder will be positioned absolutely at the center of the page, and set the transform to translate x -50% to get it exactly at the center. Let's add some media rules now. I'm setting the max width to 1500 pixels. In here, set the app's flex direction to column, set the controls width to 100 VW and height to 50 VH. Do the same with the base. The adder will have its top at 50% and left at 0. Set its translate y to -100% as well. As a finisher, set the button's font size to 1 rem. Let's get on with the JavaScript part. Make a script tag, and in here, firstly, call the base div from the DOM using the document.querySelector method. Don't forget the dot in front of the base, since we are calling it by the class. Call all the elements inside the choice div as well. You should always store them in relevant names. Let's make the add function first. In here, call the createElement method and store it in a variable. We are actually making a div and storing it in a variable I'm calling x. You can call it whatever you want. Set the x's background color to some random value between 0 and 255. Don't forget to use the mat.floor method because the values cannot be a decimal value. We will also give x a random width and a random height with a minimum limit of 10 VW or VH. Mat.random generates a number between 0 and 1. If you multiply that number by 10, it will become a number between 0 and 10. If you add 10 to that, the number will always be greater than or equal to 10 as well. Say if it generated 0.2, multiply that by 10, you get 2. Add 10 to that and you get 12. That's what we are after. We also want to get rid of x if we click on it. So add a onClick event listener to it, and in here, do x.remove. This method will get rid of x as we want. And at the very end, don't forget to append x into base. Let's make the justify content function now. All we need to do in here is to set the base's justify content to whatever we pass through the variable a. You're smart enough to figure out what we're going to do next. Make an align items function and set the base's align item property to a. And make a flex direction function and set the base's flex direction to a as well. That is absolutely all, and technically you have made your own visual editor, but we are not done yet. As the last step, we want to see our settings, and that will happen as soon as you set them. So in the justify content function, set jc.innerText to justify content :a. Justify content here will be a string. If you do a plus, it won't actually add a, but it will concat a and justify content together. And do the same with the other functions as well. Okay, so before you leave, hear me out. Okay, firstly, I'm very sorry. I missed an upload. I was supposed to upload a video on Friday, but I got vaccinated and I fell ill for a while. I'm feeling about 70% better right now. 0 being in a coma and 100% being watching anime while coding. The thing is, I am not at all used to talking into a mic and a camera. Let's get real actually. I really don't like talking in general. And that's why I haven't made many videos with my face in them. And the thing is, I want to get better at that. And that's why you'll see my face in more videos from now on, or at least that's what I hope. Because in the end, if I don't tell you a little bit about myself, we won't be forming a community. This will just be another video on your feed, and you won't know who's behind this video. And that's important because you're probably here to learn something, and if you don't know who this person is, you would not want to be here, and you'll never know what's in store. So greetings fellow gamers, my name is Yash. I code a lot, and that's actually a big problem of mine. I started off early, like when I was an embryo. I used to make robots and all sorts of Arduino things when I was young, but I really got interested in how computers work. and one day I decided to pick up electrical engineering. But honestly, I did not know where to start with that, and that's where a small group known as Tech Shiksha came in. They brought science and engineering to the classroom and made the learning process pretty much amazing. That's where I really took a deep dive into my own passions. This really might sound like a sponsored video, but it really isn't. Right now, this group is called Witblox, and they're making kits for very cool science projects. They have all sorts of electronics kits. You can make stuff like a line following robot, RC cars, and even AI driven projects. I would know that one because I actually personally worked on them. I am working for them right now, and it has been an amazing journey. My time has been filled with very supportive coworkers and fun projects, many trial and errors, and I can keep going on with all the things that I've gained from them, but the list will just never end. The point I'm trying to make is check them out and you'll find some of my work there as well. I'll leave a link in the description. And yeah, I want you, my dear viewers, to stay tuned because the quality will always be going up and you will learn something out of it as well. So, bye.